Let's talk about buying a 3D printer. Yeah, this ought to be good. So the big question right now, I'd love to get comments below, is to what printer you would buy right now. There are just so many. The market's kind of flooded with a lot of different companies and a lot of different brand names. And some of them have great prices, some of them have good features, some of them have high speeds. There are so many things to look at. And if you're buying your very first printer, I think the market could be like really, confusing right now because there's just so much out there. And I'm sure most people will push you, your friends and that are going to say, get you a high-speed printer, man. But there's such a thing as, budget. Yeah, we all know. If you see a good printer and it's only $200, you might want to buy that as opposed to $1,200 or $1,400 or something for a high-speed printer. There's some really good deals on high-speed printers coming. Seems to be hitting the market now as things are working in. And we'll be getting more into that in the next few weeks because I've got one coming in that's going to be a great price, high speed, and seems to offer lots of the features. It's sort of like that, sort of like the Creality K1 kind of thing, and that ought to be an interesting printer. The Bamboo Lab thing really shook the market last year, and I think that really change the focus of what to buy. But at the same time, you and me, if we're buying our very first printer, you might want to go really low ball price just to get a feel and taste and flavor of a 3D printer. You don't want to be running out and buying something that's expensive and turns out you don't like it, don't want to run it, whatever. This one here is an interesting example of a situation. This is the Snapmaker AT250, and it's a 3D printer that's really expensive. And it's like, if you were buying your very first one, I'd probably say maybe steer away from this one, even though it's easy to use. It's functionally a great little printer, but it also offers, it will also convert to a laser engraver, and it'll also do CNC work. Yeah, the whole, 3-in-1. And that's great, but you have to pay for that. Plus I have the enclosure here. So the total package is like $1,800, I don't recommend spending that kind of money for your first 3D printer. I think a couple of $100s is a reasonable thought. But like I said in the comments below, I'd love to hear from you guys as to, what printer would you run out and buy tomorrow? Even if you already have printers, and maybe you have, like I do, like 10 printers or something, but what would you add or what would you buy right now? That would be an interesting comment to see, and I want to read all the comments, as we progress through the week and see how that goes. Personally, when I went out to buy my very first printer, almost 10 years ago, I looked at size and price, and that was the only two things I considered. Eventually, the third thing that kind of kicked in was brand naming, because I slowly, as I looked at the market, realized that there was some companies out there that were making some printers that were kind of, they showed up kind of shoddy at the door and they needed tweaking and work. And because it would be my very first experience with a 3D printer, I did not want to get into troubleshooting or trying to repair an electronic board or something to get the printer up and running, or even mechanical issues. So I realized, you're going to need to go, you should go with a brand name, and in this case, the brand name I chose at that time was Creality, because they seem to be making printers that were within a half an hour to an hour out of the box. They were up and running, and a lot of the companies seem to have sort of picked up on that and said, hey, let's ship these things out so that they can put them together really easily, get them up and running really easily, because the easier this whole situation goes, the better the experience is going to be for the very first time, at least for the first 3D printer. Once you get comfortable in that 3D printing zone, you get to know what to look for, and you sort of get a taste for certain things with 3D printers. So the very first thing, price, obviously, size would be your other, and then a brand name. Those are the three things that, if I was buying my very first one, I would consider. But I know looking at the market right now, it's like there's just so much out there to choose from. So of all the printers right now, I think at the top end of spending money, I would look at the Bamboo Lab, obviously. I would look at their three printers that they offer the market right now, and it would probably be, that would probably be where I would swing. But that doesn't, include price, and that doesn't take on size, because Bamboo Lab is 256 build plate. This one's 300, for example. It's a bigger build. And I have a couple of machines that are large, 300 plus, millimeter build plate sizes. But the Bambu Lab for price, I just don't see a better printer out there right now, if you can spend the money. Yeah. The other one that is interesting, that is a little bit better price, I think, for size and features, is the Creality, the K1 and the K1 Max. Those two really are competitive right directly against Bambu Lab. And to tell you the truth, Creality has a good name, a good brand name. It's kind of like the Ford F-150 pickup truck that's been around for a while. There's a third brand name that I'm going to mention because it's a recognized brand name, and it is a very good printer, but it's in that high price zone, is the Prusa Mark IV, for example. Excellent printer, and whether that would be my first printer or not, I don't know, because I have to admit that Prusa has put out good software and good printers for a very long time, so they're a good brand name. They're definitely. The other one that's coming out, we're going to have it here in a few weeks, I think it's called the QB. I'm never going to get the name right, but it's QIBI, and it's a high-speed printer that's supposed to compete with the Bambu Lab and the K1 and all that. So we'll see how that goes when it gets in here. The meantime, let's go to the other end. Now, let's go to the other end and say I don't want to spend more than maybe a few $100s, and I want something that's decent, reliable, doesn't require a lot of maintenance, and can be set up easily and run. I've got them here, and I use them because I actually like them, and that's why I'm going to show them to you. If it came down to low budget and best possible ease of assembly and simply reliable, this one right here these two right here would probably fit the bill. This is the King Room, and this is the KPS3, and they've got linear rails here, which make them really, really reliable. Linear rail here, linear rail on the vertical axis, so all the movement is controlled through bearings, not through rubber wheels. So already you have like an industrial kind of machine, but these sell right around, their sale price sometimes around $200, and that to me is just an awesome little, get started printer, but also you could keep these forever because they're reliable and they're just going to keep going. In fact, that's why I've got these two sitting here, is they're doing part of my print farming, and when we have an order come through that fits these build plates, which most of our stuff does, we use the little King Runes because they will do the job. They're not the fastest printer on the market by any means, but they're reliable and they will get the job done. And this one right here is running PETG, which is really shocking because PETG, as I think I've mentioned before, and not my favorite filament, but it runs it and does a great job. So the little King Runes are a surprising, inexpensive machine, but very reliable, and in some ways they're better built than some of those other printers that we've just talked about. Yeah. That leads me to the next area, I guess, of recommendations, but this is the middle of the road. If you want to go right down the middle of the road between high price, low price, reliability, good brand name, all of the above, this is the Creality. This is the Ender 3, which you've probably heard the name. If you've ever watched a 3D printing show somewhere along the way, you've probably heard something about the Ender 3. And this is the latest in the Ender 3 series. This is the latest one that has all the bells and whistles on it right now. It came in earlier this year. As a first printer, I'm not going to say recommend it. If you want to add a printer and you don't want to spend a lot of money, but you want something decent, this is kind of legendary in the industry for some reason. And to tell you the truth, I have always been kind of shy from the Ender 3 because of the build size plate. It's not that big, and it was like, why should I have one? But I got it in, and it's not bad. It is a pretty decent kind of middle of the road printer. That's the problem, I think, is that it is just middle of the road. It's not the cheapest, which is a good printer, or the most expensive good printer. It's just kind of right dead center of the middle. I don't know how else. This is the Toyota Camry, yeah, whatever. Yes, the Artillery Sidewinder X2 Pro. There might be some more initials in there. I may have missed something, This one's 300 by 300, so it's bigger than anything we've looked at so far, and it is also, I think, 400 height-wise. So it's 300 by 300 by 400 millimeter, which is about somewhere around that, I think, 14-inch by 14-inch with a top height of around 16 and a half, 17 inches. if you wanted to do the US measurement. And that's a good size build. And for the price, this was around somewhere in that $400 range on sale when we were showing it. That is a good price for a starter printer. If you were like first time out and you wanted to buy a printer and you wanted size, that was your big thing, was you had to have that build size. This would not be a bad choice. The other one I have here, don't have it here, but could show it to you, I guess, is the longer LK5 Pro. It's a little bit more manual than this one, but it's actually, it's a good printer for what it is, and it's fairly cheap. The biggest problem I have with all the printers is, all of these, is for print farm, they're slow. And when you're doing print farming, even on a small scale like myself, one of the things I look at is how long it takes to make something, and of course we got to do some math and say, well, you know, how many hours does it take for that printer to make it? I want that printer to be running, you know, at $3 an hour or something. You know, it's got to be making some kind of coin. It would be nice if it was making $10 an hour or 20, but not going to happen. But what I'm excited about is the K1's coming in, and the K1 Creality is supposed to be somewhere around 5-6 times faster than any of these guys. If it really is, then as a print farm, that might be a good machine, but the problem goes back to maintenance. And like I said, with the Crealities, the Ender 3 there, it requires adjustment constantly. It's like I run 4 or 5 prints, and I've got to check those wheels again for slop, and sometimes even tighten the bend. I've had to actually tighten the tension on the drive belts a little bit. Yeah, it just seems like it's a high maintenance kind of situation going on. As a consumer printer, it's fine. You know, it's like, you know, it's just a hobby thing or whatever, and you mess around a little bit, tweak it, and, you know, make another print, and it's very good. That's great. But when you're doing farm production like what I'm involved with, you want good quality parts. This is where things get a little sticky. And I am still not satisfied with the answer, but I will show you something here. Parts wise, the best printer I have for the highest possible quality print would be the Snapmaker. Yeah, it puts out better looking parts with the same files, same default settings, you know, standard print and everything. It'll put out a better looking model than any of these other machines. But the cost of that thing is, in my opinion, is horrendous. For cheaper, for a lot less money than what that thing costs in total package, I could have the Bamboo Lab X Carbon 1 or whatever in here. The K1 with the high speed and everything. I have a feeling that we're going to lose quality on our prints, and if that's the case, that's not going to be any good for, say, 3D print farming, because theoretically, when my parts go out of here, I want good looking, best quality possible parts that are made here before they leave for the client. So a high-speed printer is wonderful, but if the parts don't look good and they look kind of trashy or whatever, or there's flaws in them and stuff, it's like, this is not going to be acceptable. Yeah, and you could end up putting a lot of parts in the garbage can trying to figure out, you know, what's wrong. Another company to look out for that's good is Longer. Yeah, just like it sounds, Longer. It's kind of a dumb name, but you know, they make some really good 3D printers. Been very happy with everything that's come in. They're not the prettiest thing on the market. They're not fancy with a lot of fancy gold plastic trim and racing stripes on them or something, but they seem to be very, very, you know, just outright straight, decent prices and good printers. Yeah. Now at the high end, we're going to say Prusa, which for a consumer grade printer is kind of crazy because they're almost industrial grade in their own way. Prusa is an excellent printer, but the Prusa they're pricey and they seem to hold their value. So it's kind of a, you know, there's kind of a catch there a little bit. But they're not fast. They're no faster than the stuff I got in here. But they're very, very good printers for, even like for print farms, they're really good. And Prusa supports with parts, with software. They have their own printables where you can go and look stuff up and go, oh, that's cool. Let's make one, you know, on our own printer. So Prusa's really done a very good job. I have to really hand it to them for what they have, but they've been amazing. But if I was going to spend that sort of money, I would go over to Bamboo Lab. Since last year, that's probably the #1 name that's comes up. Now, We've got, like I said, the K1 coming in from Creality, and I'm really hoping, I'm pulling, you know, for the K1 to, you know, come on, you know, like, I'm really hoping that thing proves to be everything it's supposed to be, which is mostly fast. It's very loud. That's one thing I've heard that's not good, but depending on the person. Myself, that thing will be out here in the garage. I'll never hear it in the house. I won't even know it's running. So I'm not worried about sound, but apparently it is quite noisy. So you wouldn't want it in your bedroom with you or in a room next to your bedroom, something like that. Apparently you'll hear this thing just running because it's very loud. That's sort of, yeah, that's not a deal breaker for most of us, but it is for some. You know, if you want a real quiet printer, that thing, K1 and K1 Max, I've heard they're pretty loud. But just foaming at the mouth or whatever. Can't wait to get that K1 in here so we can test it against the other ones to see how that balances the sheet at the other end for, say, like the printing farm or something. And if it really proves to be that good, then we'll order some and get more of them in. And that way we can produce our parts just that much faster, which in turn, you know, money is time and all that. Anyways, I'm gonna get out of here. Hey, thanks for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, ring the notice bell, and we'll have some interesting topics again next week. But meantime, I'm out of here. Over and out.